If you're a chiropractor and you are trying to grow your practice, I'm going to just share with you today in this video that you can't establish growth without a scaling mindset. And there's a big difference because if you're trying to grow, what you're trying to do is you're trying to repeat the things that you've done in the past that have got you to this point. And the systems and the mindset and your skill set that have got you to this point are different than what's required to get you to the next level. So, we're going to have today a scaling mindset, and that's what we're going to talk about in this video. So, growing your practice versus scaling your practice, very different things. So, it changes everything when you start to understand this. And I'm going to guarantee that when you finish watching this video today and you put some of these mindset shifts in place that we're going to talk about, immediately you'll have success. The hard truth is that most chiropractors are not building a scalable business. You're just building a job. It's hopefully a high paying job. And in many cases, unfortunately, in our profession, it's not even a high paying job. Many chiropractors are struggling, but it's all because of mindset. So you start thinking that more patients means more hours in your clinic because you're doing the same thing that you did at a certain level with those patients. You're spending so much time with each patient, and you feel that that is the same thinking that is required to get you to the next level, only if you multiply that amount over time. Well, that doesn't work. More effort equals more income, or more stress equals more success. And those are the wrong mindset thoughts that are going to keep you stuck in practice. So that's really a growth mindset. So to get to a scaling mindset, we need to shift that because growth has a ceiling. And if you don't understand the difference, you eventually hit the ceiling. So growth versus scale. The real difference is that growth is just doing more of what you've already been doing. It's based on your past performance. It's very linear. It's driven by your effort, and it's very proportional to the amount of time. So, in other words, I saw 100 visits last week, or 150 visits last week, or 200 visits last week. I want to get to 120 or 220 or whatever it might be. It's a small incremental shift in growth because all you're doing is more of what you've already done. Whereas scaling is different. Scaling is designing a completely different game. It's based on a future that you haven't achieved yet, and it's very much driven by leverage. It's not driven by effort. So, in other words, how do I go from 100 visits to impacting 1,000 people or 1,000 visits? And some of you can't even comprehend that mindset, but this is the shift in the thinking that has to happen for you to start scaling those practice. So the core principle is that you can't get to scale by solving for growth. So if you keep asking, how do I get 10 more patients a week? You'll never ask, how do I transform 1,000 lives? So first of all, it's a change in identity because your future self really creates your future practice. So your future shapes your present. So right now, your practice is a reflection of the patients you believe you can serve. Whether somebody put that in your mind, whether school told you this is what needs to happen during a patient visit. So you multiply that by the number of hours that you have in the week, and that's how many patients you can see, or the services that you believe you can deliver, what you need to do during that patient visit, or the amount of income that you believe is realistic or quote unquote ethical. And we've all heard that before. So you're labeled by your volume. So often we've heard in the profession that you get labeled by the amount of volume. So your thinking dictates the label that you get. So in other words, you might be a 100 a week chiropractor, or somebody over there might be a 300 a week chiropractor, or that person, that female, that guy is a 500 or a 750 a week chiropractor, or 1,000 a week chiropractor, or 1,500 a week chiropractor. You get labeled by your volume because your volume is indicative of the mindset it took to get there. So let's start with some future-based thinking. So based on the principle of chiropractic, and this is really a foundational thing, that chiropractic was founded on these principles. So you got to ask yourself, what does my practice look like at 10x? So if I'm at 200 a week right now and I multiply that by 10, what would my practice look like at 2,000 a week? And clearly, to have 2,000 patient visits a week versus 200 a week, if that's what you're seeing now, it would look completely different. The team would look different, the systems would look different, the patient experience would be different. You have to start asking yourself, what problems do I need to solve at that level? And what does a patient visit look like at that level? What does it feel like? So the key is right now is don't try to figure it out, but use it as a tool to identify and start eliminating everything that doesn't belong in that system, if that's where you want to go. So the power of who, not how. Well, many chiropractors get stuck asking, how do I get more patients? How do I market better? Maybe I need to put more money into Facebook ads to get more new patients in here without changing the system or changing the mindset first. But scaling starts to happen when you ask, what are the qualities of a patient who will help me scale? In other words, how do I create that patient that will help me grow my practice to the practice that I can see, the practice of my dreams? What does that look like? What type of patients exist in that type of practice? So your scaling shift, you got to start changing your who. So instead of just anybody and everybody, anybody who's got a spine coming into your practice or taking care of anybody with any condition, you start thinking from a principled type of standpoint. So, how can I get my message to people who want to hear it, who people who want this level of health? And there's all kinds of opportunities. So, you can start amalgamating or partnering with corporations or having some corporate wellness contracts where you actually become the company chiropractor. And that gives you a platform to start sharing your vision with people, sharing what chiropractic really truly is, that it's not a treatment of symptoms, that it is an ability to release the life expression within by removing the interference. And when people start to hear that, your practice starts to shift because the typical population wants that level of care. They want to hear that principle. They want to hear that philosophy. They just don't know it until they've heard it. And I've heard over the years in my more than 30 years, 33 years in practice, and 20 years in coaching, when people start sharing this message, when chiropractors start sharing this message with their patients, ultimately, one of the most common responses is, why didn't somebody tell me this before? So you can start aiming for people who really, really want this principle. So corporate wellness contracts, there's a huge population of people who have families who just want to be well, who want to be out of the medical system, stop taking medications, not giving their kids medications, and living a natural lifestyle, releasing the ability to reach their full potential in life. High performance athletes, higher income families, or niche health communities, people who live in this healthy lifestyle realm. So, people who want full proactive life expression versus reactive sickness care. Well, why does this matter? And this is so important, you guys, because when you start to get this, and you start to create systems to share this message in your practice changes. It becomes not a reactive center of treatment or symptomatic type of treatment. It becomes a place where people go to really reach their full God-given potential. And that's really what we want in practice. That's what people want. And that's what's going to drive your practice to the next level. That's what's going to drive the profession to the next level. So higher level people already have the belief, the resources, the momentum. They just want what differentiates chiropractic versus all other forms of therapy. So think about this, because if you don't have the systems in place or the mindset and the way to articulate that principle to your patients, people group you in with all of the other healthcare professions that treat symptoms. So you get grouped in with the physiotherapists, you get grouped in with the medical doctors or the physiatrists, you get grouped in with the osteopaths, the massage therapists, the naturopaths, everybody that treats symptoms, everybody that treats pain. And most of the chiropractic profession is in that category. So to differentiate yourself, start creating, start putting the systems into your office to allow those people, those patients, to be educated to what makes you different. So start upgrading your who. So your current ideal patient. Write down what is your current ideal patient? What does that look like? If you had a whole practice full of these types of patients, you'd be so fulfilled and so happy. You'd love to get up in the morning, love to go to the office and serve these people because they fill you up as much as you care for them. So how do you create opportunities to help those people discover what it is they want? Well, one of the best ways to do that is create a platform that allows you to share your heart, share your vision, share the principle with the people in your community. So, for people that do group doctor's reports or group health classes in their office, that is one of the best ways to do that, to stimulate families to come in, to stimulate referrals, doing dinners on a regular basis. So, in other words, taking all of your new patients for the month out for dinner the next month and just sharing love with them, just telling them how much you appreciate them, share dinner with them, and tell them about your journey. Tell them about your vision for chiropractic, the way that you care for your family, the way that you care for your children. And people want to hear that. And you create these warrior patients. You create a tribe of people who really want to follow you. Start doing some monthly health talks, like a regular nutrition talk in your office that, again, is going to give you a platform. It's a great way to attract people in because the majority of people want weight loss. They want to learn about how to manage their hormones. They want to learn how to manage their thyroid or decrease toxicity. These are catchy things that get people in, and you interweave the principle of chiropractic about how a properly functioning nervous system is necessary for their hormones to work properly or necessary for them to not have weight loss resistance. And you weave that in, and then you turn these people into chiropractic patients. You have regular makeovers, talk to them about their nutrition and their exercise. Anything that supports the prevention of subluxation is a great thing to put into your practice. Lunch and learns in the corporate sector. Corporations love this. And I would aim for companies that have more than 50 employees because they have some resources. They typically have an HR department. You can go in there and go in, like set up times. Don't just set up one, but set up something where you would go in maybe quarterly over the next year or even 2 years, where you would be able to go and they would recognize you. You build some trust. And eventually, as you do that, you then are looked at as the company chiropractor. And people just start coming and referring people to you because you're their company chiropractor. So you create these corporate partnerships. Your regular group health class and doctor's report is so vital, so important. And one thing that really helped us grow our practice to 1,200 visits a week was putting in enough doctor's reports in the week that literally no new patient could say no, they couldn't make it because we had so many options. So we were doing 3 doctor's reports a week. Our doctor's report was 45 minutes, and we would just share the principle of chiropractic. We would talk to them about what a normal spine looks like versus what an unhealthy spine looks like, how the nervous system is affected, and how for them to heal, they would need to get their spine corrected. So we did this before they saw their exam findings, their x-rays, their scans, and people went into it with that inspiration. They went into it with that emotional connection, and they were able to at least have the opportunity to build some trust with us. And thus that grew our practice to 1,200 a week. So we did it on Tuesday nights and Thursday nights and as well on Thursday morning. So we were doing 3 doctor's reports a week. So there was absolutely no opportunity for somebody to say that they couldn't make it. So every single new patient was, and we made it a requirement to go through there for them to be a patient in our office. And if they didn't want to do that, we would just basically refer them to somebody else who would take care of them without that necessity. But what it did, it pre-qualified all the people. It weeded out people who didn't want what we were delivering, but it pre-qualified all the people that did want to come in and have care in our office to at least know what they were getting. And that was hugely valuable. So scaling requires a really brutal movement. This is called raising the floor. So you must raise your floor. So it means you stop saying yes to low value activities. You stop serving below your potential and you stop accepting good enough. So this is a really big thing. And I want you to try to identify what happens during a patient visit. There's the time that you walk into the adjusting area and you say hello, you greet that patient, and there's a certain amount of time that happens from the time you walk in to the time that you actually start making an adjustment to that person. And In many cases, that can be a long time for people. You end up talking about everything under the sun. It's a lot of small talk. You talk about the weather, you talk about the sports game last night. So these are things to start really identifying what you're doing and put the systems in place to try to minimize or eliminate those small talk or those low value conversations. There's the time that you adjust the person from the first adjustment to the very last adjustment, and then there's the time that the adjustment is closed. In other words, to the time that you walk out of the adjusting area or out of the room. So those are the three parts of that patient visit, and it's the part A and the part C that we really need to start to minimize and make smaller because a lot of time is wasted during that time. So it and also too the if you really start to understand how you want to deliver chiropractic, you're going to start eliminating things you do in that patient visit that maybe in the back of your mind somebody told you, whether it was school or one of the interns you saw in clinic or whatever it was, that says you have to do this during that office visit to justify the fee you're charging. So we just need to realize that the adjustment is the most important thing during that office visit. So anything else other than that adjustment, whether it's soft tissue or stretching or mobilizing or whatever it might be, are much lower value activities. And maybe there's a time and place for that, but not during that adjustment time. So if you want to think of scaling, these are things we really need to start identifying and eliminating if necessary. So stop accepting good enough. So create the systems to address and filter out those low value activities. And here's the big reality check on that is that you will be tested. This is going to be tough because it's very common to migrate back to your um, old habits and old patterns. So old patients that you've seen for a long time, they're not going to want to change. So either you have to draw a line in the sand and say, I'm going to continue doing the same thing for those older patients and do something new for the new patients, or you create a conversation with those older patients to say, I am starting to improve my skills, improve my delivery, and my delivery of chiropractic is going to be a little different moving forward and help them to understand why that's the benefit for them. So, and also too, here's the other thing is that easy money will start to tempt you. You're going to have to, some people are going to come in and say, "Hey, I want this, and I'll be a patient if you do it this way or this way." It's going to be tough to draw the line, especially if you're not at your capacity and you want to kind of fill your bank account with this easy money. That's going to tempt you. But I would say to you, for you to be able to scale to the next level, it's really important to draw the line and say, this is what I'm willing to accept, and this is what I'm not willing to accept. So don't get caught in that trap. So define your new floor. So start identifying. Here's a big exercise, and this is a really valuable exercise. What services are below my future practice? So see yourself in the future, see what your practice looks like, and what things are you doing now that aren't included in that new practice? Start identifying those things. You don't have to make any changes yet, but at least identify it. What patients, so identify what patients that you see now are below my future vision. So they may be those patients that you see, and maybe they're quote unquote good patients. They've been coming in for a long time, but they drain your energy. They're the ones that come in and say, "Oh, I hurt here, I hurt here, I hurt here, I hurt here, I hurt here." And you end up checking all the different parts of their body because they really don't understand the principle of chiropractic, and you're just feeding into what they want. Maybe to avoid confrontation, or maybe it's just to try to keep them around or make them happy. But start identifying some of those patients and let's start drawing a line to say, okay, they're the ones we have to have the hard conversation with, or maybe they're the ones that we have to actually say, okay, they don't fit into my future practice. I may need to refer them to somebody else. And then what activities am I doing that I must eliminate? So this is a fantastic exercise. When you start really looking at this, you start to create the practice that you really, really want. You start to eliminate burnout and you start really getting some fulfillment out of what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. So then really start deciding what I'm going to say no to starting today. What will I say no to starting today? And it could be just one thing, but at least it gets you going on that path. So the thinking is 10x is easier than 2x. So you really the way to scale is you actually identify these things and you start eliminating. So rather than adding things, which is a growth mindset, you start to eliminating things that don't matter. And you only focus on the high leverage activities and actions. And you start to create clarity, not complexity. So when we talk as far as chiropractic goes, instead of adding 100 random patient visits per week, we start to think, okay, how can I train 20 high value new patients and get them on long-term high value care plans? So it might be a care plan that might be a longer period of time, or it might involve some one-on-one coaching, or it might involve some specific corrective care or some sort of modality that's included. Or you start creating some of these corporate contracts where a company is actually paying you to be their team chiropractor or their company chiropractor. You have these scalable wellness programs that are delivered by staff as well, so it doesn't demand your time. So you have to start thinking on a bigger level rather than this transactional type of practice that has got you caught and kept you at not being able to surpass your ceiling. So here's some monetization opportunities for scaling. So this is where chiropractors really start to unlock some real wealth. So we've talked in the past about high ticket care plans. So it could be an annual or lifetime care model where people have access to everything that you offer. It might be some coaching, it might be a nutritional package, it might be some sort of family package, whatever that is, or it's a performance based program. But if you haven't created it, you're never going to be able to deliver it. So create those higher ticket care plans and make it something that you think is completely unreasonable at this point. Two reasons. Number one, you're going to be surprised at how many people, when you deliver that properly, actually want it, because people that get to know you and trust you, they want this level of care. They want the best that you can deliver. So if you deliver a care plan that is the best that you can deliver, it encompasses everything that you really stand for, and it's priced at a premium, many people are going to want that. That's number one. So number two, for those people who don't want it or don't see the value in it, then your regular care plan that you try to deliver now becomes a no-brainer. You'll have a much higher percentage of people say yes to your regular care plan because you've anchored them to that higher price care plan. So there's two reasons to do that. And it really does increase your conversion rate when you do that. So again, corporate wellness contracts where businesses may pay you a regular fee to take care of their employees. And it may be a co-payment, or it may be just a contract payment where you're going into their corporate workplace to share information or do health talks or nutrition talks or whatever that may be. And it gives you massive leverage because it builds trust within that community. And it's recurring scalable revenue. There's many staff delivered services like rehab programs, corrective care classes, exercise classes, or even some wellness coaching where one of the staff or even maybe one of the doctors or an associate doctor can get on a regular Zoom call with a group of people or even one-on-one if it's priced appropriately to do some wellness coaching, to keep people accountable and to give them health coaching for themselves and their family. There's digital group models, like I said, these online spinal health programs. It could be a monthly Zoom call for your membership or your patients, workshops, as we mentioned, makeovers, certain education. So now you're impacting one to many. It's not a one-on-one type of transactional model. You're getting your message out to a bigger group. That's how you start to scale. And the strategic partnership. So look for opportunities in your community where you can start to build partnerships. And that could be a gym, a functional medicine clinic. It could be a midwife, med spas, or corporate HR departments. There's lots of opportunities. All you got to do is just start picking up the phone, sending an email, follow up. And once they start to know you, people want this. They want this type of help. So scaling is not limited by your strategy. It's really limited by your level of fear. So it's that comfort zone that you live in right now that you think is where you're supposed to be based on your education or whoever's taught you to this point, or just the values that you've created. So it's time to start looking outside of those values. It's time to start looking outside of that comfort zone, because that's how you get past the fear and the resistance and the identity that you've created for yourself at this point. So to scale, to grow to the next level, you need to change your identity. That's the most important thing. So, and here's the big thing. This is a signal that you're on the right path, is that is you create this resistance, like, oh, I don't know if I can do this, or there's a little bit of uncertainty. That's a good thing at this point, because it means you're stepping into a place that you're unfamiliar with, and that's okay. The difference is, if you have a rigid mindset, you end up retreating to the past. But if you have a flexible mindset, that's the mindset that needs to get you, or will allow you to get to the future, your future self, your future practice. So operate from the future. So, what would my 10x self do now? Start to do that. So, the final shift is, most chiropractors, they just think of adjusting spines. It's a one-on-one, it's a transactional thing. They'll accept anybody under the sun. They're trying to attract anybody and everybody for anything and everything. And that just doesn't work. So, you're running off of a schedule. It's limited by time, and you're trying to manage your staff. So you're really trying to run this practice that is totally dependent on you and your effort and everything that you've done up to this point. That's a growth mindset. But a scaling mindset is one that actually starts to design systems, that starts to look towards the future on how you see yourself practicing, that is different from what you do now. You start to build a team, and you start to create impact at scale. Look for opportunities to create impact in a bigger group and at a bigger scale. And if you do this, I guarantee you'll start seeing some practice changes, some practice growth. If you want some help with this, don't be afraid to leave a comment in the bottom. I would love if you can like and subscribe these videos. And if you'd like to set up a call with me, just leave me a comment, and let's set up a call and talk about how we can help you grow your practice to the next level.